A virus has a very interesting capacity to introduce new genes into our own genomes and express, genes make protein, and protein have a functions. And in diseases, sometimes that function is lost. So if you can bring in that genetic material with a healthy gene that can be producing that healthy protein, then you correct the disease.
And so, well, perhaps this is a good time to talk about viruses. What exactly is what exactly is a virus? I hear people talking about the fact that viruses are alive, but this doesn't sound like something that's alive that's doing this. This is like a tool. This is like a screwdriver or a hammer that you're using to accomplish something.
Yes, but when you want to manipulate and bring viruses to your advantage to modify the genetic code, then you use them as tools. But initially, viruses are somehow organisms that depend on us or other cells, mammalian cells, could be animal, could be plant cells, to amplify themselves, so to replicate. And so outside of their organism, they don't replicate. They are inert.
They
But
don't move
when
either, huh?
they don't move, they don't do anything. They cannot grow, they cannot multiply. But then when they enter their own host, their own cells where they can amplify, they amplify themselves and they create more and more and more of them.
Now, they can't really enter though, right? It's like they're taken up. Sort of, they're too passive, perhaps. Do I understand that correctly?
Well,
Hey, all of this seems like a very passive process. I've seen videos of, like COVID entering lung cells through the ACE2 receptor. And all of it is just protein-based. And it doesn't seem like there's an active decision that's being made on the part of the virus, because, well, the virus can't do anything, right?
well, it can enter cells. That's an active mechanism. It uses a lot of the tools from the cells itself, but it does get in and then it replicates. That also is an active mechanism that uses energy, as a matter of fact.
But
And then it
is
produces
it the cell's energy or is it the virus's energy?
No, it's the cell's energy, but that's why viruses are so good. They hijack the mechanism of our own cells. They use our own tools to make more of themselves.
So, okay, what is an exosome? What's the difference between an exosome and a virus?
Well, that's a very good question. In many respects, they are very similar.
Okay.
But in a lot of respects, they are also different.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with how they're similar, maybe.
Okay.
Well, they are the same shape. Exosome can be round like a virus and can be made of the same lipidic membrane like a virus. They are budging out of cells like a virus. So that's a lot of common points.
They have genes in them also sometimes?
Sometimes they can. They can. Sometimes accidentally, maybe, or I don't know any exosome that has. Well, they can have it on design as well, because they have function as well. So
what's their function?
yeah, well, for example, exosome can be produced to fuse with other exosome or with endosome that gets in the cell with sample from the outside of the cell, and then they could degrade it. They could make pieces of it. They could re-expose them outside of the cells as signaling ways to communicate.
So protection and talking to other cells in the body?
Well, so you said something about taking something from the outside and digesting it, and we've been learning a lot about the immune system, about these, I think they're MHC class 2 molecules? And they're the ones that are... So are exosomes involved in...
packaging of external?
Or like spreading the message between cells about what needs to
That's
go.
right.
Huh, I never thought
That's
about it that
right.
way.
Can
Yeah.
they spread
But at the same
between?
time,
Can they transfer
it's
between
what?
individual organisms?
Organism or cells?
Well, let's start
Well,
with
that is a good question.
Yeah, let's start with cells and then we can talk about organisms.
Well, usually no, they don't, and this what is one difference with viruses. Viruses can get out of the cells, enter a new cells, and replicate, makes more of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Exosomes are produced sometimes, but they do not grow to make more of themselves.
So they don't contain any instructions for producing more exosomes.
That's correct. Yes, they don't.
So it's a more accidental process. Or is it intentional?
Well, sometimes we don't know. We are
Huh.
still trying to learn. We're still trying to learn what exactly all they can do because endosome have better defined function. We understand, we have studied endosome a lot. Exosome, it's not that clear. Sometimes it's very well known. For example, in neurons, you get a lot of exosomes that are releasing neurotransmitter, which are protein that favor transmission of an electric pulse. And that's making us thinking. But a lot of time we see a lot of endosome outside of the cells, and quite frankly, I don't think we know everything about exosome that are produced. And that's the beauty of research in science is that you keep digging and you keep understanding and finding new ways and new mechanism and new function that can explain a lot of things in life, from how mechanism works to sometimes diseases. What causes diseases?
Well, so this is really interesting because many people who study viruses seem to fall into two groups. There are those that study the viruses that are dangerous to humans, and then there are those that are going into the environment and trying to identify all the different viruses that live there
They live?
Yeah.
or that exist there. And something that seems really interesting is the enormous genetic diversity of viruses in the environment versus the viruses that are actually dangerous to humans.
Like there's a lot of viruses, but you think there's not a lot that are dangerous?
Well, it seems to be that way, right?
That's right. There is over 600 million viruses in nature, when actually only just above 1,000 are linked to diseases in human.
Really?
And so imagine the viruses that are causing disease is a very small fraction of the entire number of viruses that are potentially circulating. Not all of them are known. These are calculation, and this is why mathematics is so phenomenal, is that we can calculate viruses that we don't even know about. We don't even know their existence for sure. We have never isolated them.
How do you calculate them? Math can tell you if viruses exist?
Yeah, it can, because you can go and do calculation from what exists now and what you can detect in nature and get an estimate of how many viruses are out there, because we usually detect viruses that are causing disease. We don't detect viruses that are not doing anything, that are not causing any disease, that are not creating any phenomenon. We don't know about these. They are
So
hard to find.
are those sort of accidental failed experiments, or do you think that those non non-pathologic viruses, do you think that they have some role in nature? Do they have like an adaptive role?
That is a good question. They could well be. They are part of the ecosystem, and for a lot longer than human beings have been part of the ecosystem. So yeah, it's one of the many hypotheses that could explain what is the role, if any, these unknown viruses may have.
Interesting. So they might be trash, or they might have some role in transferring genes or mutation for natural selection.
Yeah, because we started talking about how you're using these viruses to deliver gene therapies. So,
That's right. But yeah.
so how many viruses that a human being interacts with are quietly changing the genetic code? Is that something that's happening all the time as you are walking around in the world?
Do you think nature is trying to do gene therapy
Is nature gene therapying humans?
and everyone else?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of viruses that have been linked to evolution, and also evolution of human are not evolving that quickly. But viruses could be a way to favor evolution, to favor the acquisition of different characteristics.